Hello and welcome to my presentation video on the ethics of hacking. My name is Demita, that's spelled D-M-I-T-A, or some of you have come to know me, Mr. Wonderful. For the next 8 minutes or so, I'm going to talk to you about whether or not hacking is ethical or unethical. I know we all have to go through a few of these presentations, and so I've decided to jazz mine up a bit, and I hope you'll appreciate some of the visuals I've added, the sense of humor, and the music that will make an otherwise dull 8 minutes pretty entertaining. To come to a conclusion about whether or not hacking is ethical or unethical, we're going to have a brief overview of hacking, a discussion about the standards that I will use to test the ethics of hacking, and the provisions of those ethical standards. Our ethical actors that will be put to the test will be the hacker group Anonymous and the US government's Cyber Warfare and Information Gathering Group, TEO. Based on the actions performed by both groups in comparison to our ethical standards, will ultimately answer the question of whether or not hacking is ethical or unethical, and if hackers are digital heroes or cyber terrorists. So, hacking has become more than just playful pranks by computer nerds. In the 1970s, John Draper became a legend in the hacking community by using the unique frequency of a toy whistle found in a box of cereal to make unbilled phone calls through AT&T's switched phone system. This ultimately saddled him with the nickname Captain Crunch. For a long time, hackers like Draper were concerned with only penetrating a system and exploring the information within. Hacking was so amusing that the practice spawned movies such as War Games and the self-titled Hackers, which starred a young Angelina Jolie. Today, with a whopping 71% of households in the US accessing and using the internet, hackers now have a greater impact on individuals, government, and businesses in general. Hacker groups now penetrate systems to promote their agendas or punish anyone they feel is unjust. Government agencies have also started to use hacking to gather intelligence and counter domestic and foreign terrorism. With such a great impact on the lives of Americans and people across the world, the question remains to be answered: is hacking ethical when used by groups to punish unjust acts or by a government to protect its citizens? To answer this question, we need first to choose an ethical standard and the provisions of that standard that will be used to test the actions of our ethical actors. I have chosen to use a combination of the ACM Code of Ethics and the class's ongoing standard for ethics. The ACM Code of Ethics is a well-defined standard of ethics for computing and technology. I think this Code of Ethics serves as a good test of the ethics of hacking, since hackers should not be measured by popular opinion. I also feel that our class serves as a knowledgeable body when it comes to computing and is a good choice to be a representative sample of the population. The provisions of our ethical test will be the ACM Code of Ethics General Moral Imperatives, starting with Section 1.2, Avoid Harm to Others. Section 1.2 states that harm means injury or negative consequences, such as undesirable loss of information, loss of property, property damage, or unwanted environmental impacts. We'll also use Section 1.4, Be fair and take action not to discriminate. Section 1.4 states, the values of equality, tolerance, respect for others, and the principles of equal justice govern this imperative. Another provision that is extremely relevant for our test is Section 1.7, respect the privacy of others, and I quote, computing and communication technology enables the collection and exchange of personal information on a scale unprecedented in the history of civilization. Thus, there is increased potential for violating the privacy of individuals and groups. It is the responsibility of professionals to maintain the privacy and integrity of data describing individuals. The last ACM provision for our test will be Section 2.8. Theft or destruction of tangible and electronic property is prohibited by Imperative 1.2, Avoid harm to others. Finally, we will use the class's ongoing ethical standards as they apply to the intrusion of government entities into the lives of people everywhere by hacking. Our first ethical actor whose actions we will examine is the hacker group Anonymous. Anonymous has gained much notoriety as of late and have proclaimed themselves to be defenders of free speech. Aside from numerous protests where members remain unknown under the clever disguise of Guy Fawkes masks, Anonymous has performed numerous computer attacks through group-wide hacking called operations. These attacks are the ethical actions that we will test using our ACM and class provisions. since the attacks were performed against companies and individuals in what Anonymous says is the defense of freedom of speech on the internet. The ethics of their actions are questionable and have caused many people to come to the defense of Anonymous's hacking attacks and others to call them cyber terrorists. A few attacks performed by Anonymous include Operation Payback is a Bitch, which brought down the websites of companies like the RIAA and the MPAA that were actively trying to stop the piracy of music and videos on the internet. Anonymous attacks were attempts at retaliation against what they deemed censorship of speech and freedom of information, yet the respective companies involved in the attack ended up suffering losses as their systems were brought offline. Other attacks by Anonymous include Operation Avenge Assange, which brought down the websites of Amazon, Visa, PayPal, and MasterCard as retaliation for attempts at shutting down the website WikiLeaks, which gained much attention for releasing secret and oftentimes illegal classified government documents. Anonymous also used hacking to not only defend but to punish groups such as the Westboro Baptist Church for their openly homophobic stance on gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender individuals. An important attack to examine would be the release of UC Davis officer John Pike's personal information to the public after the now infamous pepper spray incident during the Occupy movements of 2011. Because these attacks seem both justified and harmful, it is necessary to test them against our ethical provisions to determine whether or not they are ethical or unethical. Before we can test the ethical implications of hacking, we must also consider so-called legal hacking. I use the term legal loosely. The US government's National Security Agency has put together contracted hackers to form its Tailored Access Operations Group to hack and monitor foreign governments and its officials in the defense of US citizens. Currently, the President receives 75% of his daily intelligence briefings from this group, and the NSA goes through 2 petabytes an hour of stolen data from across the internet. The data collected by government hacking is so great that it is collected and aggregated at a control center so that analysts can analyze any threats to the US. The US government's increased use of hacking has also spawned a number of security firms that are employing hackers to find security flaws in software every day. Based on the provisional sections of the ACM Code of Ethics and the class's ongoing ethical standards, I've determined that hacking attacks are primarily unethical. The only exception being if a government performs hacking in the defense of its citizens, as outlined by our class's belief that any government entity working in the interest of keeping us safe is allowed to supersede any privacy. The hacker group Anonymous violated ACM provisions 1.7 and 1.2 with the release of Officer John Pike's personal information and violated the ACM's privacy standard by discriminating against Westboro Baptist Church freedom of speech, which violated Section 1.4 of the ACM Code of Ethics by not treating the group fairly. To conclude, our test of Anonymous and the US government's actions have found hacking to be unethical unless explicitly allowed for the defense and safety of our citizens.